Your mother is scary, Jon murmured. Sansa, in the middle of undoing her braid, closed her eyes in what looked to be absolute mortification. I got Robb to promise, she said. Not Mother. Gods, Jon, I'm sorry. They're being rather unhelpful about this whole thing, you know, and, well, what did she say to you? He rolled fully onto the bed so he was staring up at the canopy. That if I ever raised so much as a finger to you, she'd ensure that I'd beg for mercy before I died. The actual words had been, hurt worse than the Lord Royce Bolton flayed alive, but Jon rather thought that Sansa didn't need to know the entirety of her mother's imagination. Well, Sansa said. I've no words, Jon. Mother's always been protective of me, and it doesn't look like she'll stop anytime soon. He propped himself on his elbow, watching her, and her eyes met his in the looking glass. I am sorry for what it's worth. If I do hurt you, said Jon, I'm sure I'll deserve everything your mother does to me. Sansa sighed playfully. If you hurt me, I'll be handling it myself. We Starks don't turn our faces, Jon, don't you remember? I remember, he replied. I just think your mother isn't half as scary as you, and so would prefer to be handled by her. How wonderful, she said, and got up from the vanity, coming closer to him. I'm glad I frightened you. You frighten me, he agreed, because you're so beautiful, and I can't seem to stop myself from doing everything to you despite being married for almost half a year already. So sweet, she exclaimed, high enough to make him wince, but then she kissed him, and Jon fell back onto the cushions, and there was little enough talk for the rest of the day. Robb received a raven the next morning from their father. He asked me to return, he told Sansa and their mother over breakfast. Jon had apparently declined to attend. The wildling attacks have gotten too serious. He wants the army back in the north. And the urgency has nothing to do with the fact that you hate the south, said Sansa. It's too hot, Robb declared. I've no idea how you lived here for so long, Sansa. I can scarce sleep at night. I swear there's no air to breathe. Perhaps you ought to stop dressing in such heavy furs, their mother murmured, and Robb exhaled loudly, impatiently. Sansa laughed. Fine. But even if you go back, I have to stay here. Aye, he said slowly. I'll need an army, Sansa reminded him. We're inviting too many soldiers. If there's a chance, they'll take advantage. We need to have the upper hand as long as they remain here. Edmure ought to be riding here, their mother commented. Have him bring his army. Is it big enough? More than, Robb reassured her. Then, lips quirking, Mother, what about you? She turned to Sansa. Will you need me here? Yes, Sansa said plainly, then hesitated. Though I'd understand if you want to go home with Robb. Rickon misses you like you wouldn't believe. You need me, their mother said calmly. Her eyes crinkled in a smile. My queen needs me. What mother could deny that? Sansa swallowed, staring into her cup as if it held the secrets of the universe. Slowly, she looked up at them both and flashed her teeth in a genuine smile. I'll be finishing this as quickly as possible, she told him. We should all be back in Winterfell soon. Definitely, said Robb, and whatever anger was between the two of them faded as if it never existed. Robb left the morning after their uncle came from Riverrun. Sansa hugged him tightly, told him to keep safe, and then shoved him towards Jon, whom he hadn't spoken to since his arrival at King's Landing. Go on, she said, and turned away. Robb breathed deep and approached Jon, careful and wary as he'd never before even considered. There was something fragile between them, now, a mistrust that sank into every look, every breath, every thought. Sansa was Robb's sister, and she pushed and prodded until he gave in exasperatedly. Robb had forgiven her for her silence quicker than he'd expected, but Jon had only accepted Robb's silent anger, and he'd done so with an ease that made something hot and hard curl up in Robb's belly. At any other time, Robb might have continued to hold on to it. But there was another war brewing up north, another kingdom that he had to defend. He knew better than to let this fester for any longer than necessary. "Stay alive," he said finally, after a long pause. Jon nodded. "You too." After a moment, Robb could stand the tense silence no longer. He turned and grabbed Jon's shoulder. "If you ever do something like that again," he said lowly, I don't know what. But you'll regret it. It doesn't matter to me who your parents were. You're my brother. And you don't get to keep quiet on things this important, Jon. Gods, just imagine. Imagine Bran going and finding a wife without whispering a single word of it to anyone. You don't get to act less? Do you understand? You're my brother. You're my brother. And anyone who says otherwise will get a sword blade to their throat. Next time you take this important a decision, you tell me." Jon blinked and looked away and then looked back, just as steady as Sansa at her sharpest, just as steady as Arya at her fiercest. "All right," he said, and if the edges cracked, if it was hoarse, Robb ignored it. Into Robb's ears, as they embraced, he whispered, "It was me who wanted to keep quiet about it. Not Sansa. She was ready to send ravens, but I asked her not to. I was afraid." Robb stepped back and chewed over that for a moment before sighing. "Why were you afraid?" "I what?" "Why were you afraid?" Robb repeated. "Because you were afraid of our reactions? Because you didn't think we'd approve? Why didn't you want to tell us?" Jon ducked his head, and for all that he was taller than Robb, for all that he was older, by however many months, Robb felt like he was looking at the brother who clenched his teeth against the world's judgment and glared at everyone who spat the word bastard and still set his sword to the grindstone. Not hesitating for a moment, Robb felt like he was looking at the brother who had always been twice as stubborn as a mule and as foolishly steady, her most Sansa. "I didn't want to make it real," he said finally. "Sansa, I love her. But I've never been enough. I couldn't save her, not when we went south the first time, not when she was in the north the second. Sansa saved herself, and I'll always be glad for that, but I wasn't there." He inhaled shallowly. "I am just as honorless as the Kingslayer." "Back up," Robb said firmly. "There's a difference between not having the chance to fulfill your vows and actively breaking them. And you did save Sansa that last time. You did the best you could in a situation where you couldn't win." He wrinkled his nose. "Also, tell Sansa how you feel. She's much better at the whole inspirational thing." Jon smothered a laugh in his sleeve. "And what are you good at then?" "Compared to Sansa?" Robb rolled his eyes. "Nothing. She was always the perfect one. Everyone else just looks foolish next to her, He felt his lips twitch as a sudden thought occurred to him. "In point of fact, I feel rather bad for you, stuck beside a woman who makes you look as sophisticated as a horse's ass for the rest of your life. Gods, I can hardly think of a worse fate." Jon retorted, "but at least I've got some sophistication, don't I? Meanwhile, you're so afraid of comparison you're running away before anyone actually gets their head on straight and realizes how much better Sansa is at everything." And he dodged Robb's punch, speaking through the laughter that was threatening to swallow his words. And you're taking your bloody army with you, because they'll turn around and bend the knee to her." "I'll rip your head off," Robb snarled and lunged forward. "Boys," murmured Winifred, but a smile curled over her lips. Alice grinned. 10 copper stars that the king wins." "Are you joking?" Willa tossed her hair. "Sansa's husband has muscles. Or am I the only one who's been peeking during the bathing sessions on the road?" "Willa," Winifred hissed. Willa rolled her eyes. "You were almost worse than me. Going after that tall-haired boy like he makes the sun rise every morning, good mother. You can do better, Win." "Willa," Winifred hissed again. "Fine," said Willa. and then turned, ignoring her sister entirely. She nodded to Alice. "I'll take you up on that bet. 10 stars on Jon Stark to win this." "Agreed," said Alice. Once Winifred huffed and left them to go and talk to Adira, who was at least not so blatantly scandalous. She leaned in towards Willa and said, "You weren't alone in the looking, if you were wondering." Willa arched a gleeful eyebrow, and Alice shook her head. "Not me, I've got more class than that, but you should have seen Adira." "No," Willa said aghast. "She wouldn't." "She did." Alice grinned again, smugly. "And I'm fairly certain something might happen soon, if you haven't already. It isn't like he's ugly, and it is rather understandable. I'll give you a full bag if you can guess who." "Ladies don't gamble," Willa replied haughtily, flicking a loose strand of hair away from her eyes. After Jon had wrestled Robb down into the earth and the army had left and Alice had paid Willa her coins, she looped an arm around Alice and dragged her away from the crowd. "Make it a bag of stags," Willa said, "and you've got yourself a deal." Sansa sat on a hastily made throne with Jon beside her. They'd been doing this since morning, and it was just as irritating as it was boring. Jon had begun the day sitting beside her, and as time went on, he'd gone from sitting to standing in a vain attempt to alleviate the utter dullness of it all. "Lord Tyrion wishes to address Her Majesty," said the crier, and Sansa felt a slow prickle of interest. Tyrion had been confined to his rooms since surrendering King's Landing to Robb, and this audience likely represented the first time he'd left them in nearly a month. Tyrion entered the rooms and knelt. "Your Grace." "Rise," said Sansa. "Speak, Lord Tyrion. What do you wish to know?" "When I knelt to your brother," Tyrion said quietly, "I was told he would be merciful." He hesitated. "They call you the Merciful Queen, don't they?" "They do." "Then why?" he broke off, and then continued. "I haven't seen my brother yet, Your Grace. But there are rumors, and some say that." Jon sent Sansa a meaningful look, and she leaned back and let him take over. "That he no longer has both hands," finished Jon. Tyrion rocked back on his feet. "It's true then?" "Aye," Jon said evenly. "It is. They say you don't torture your prisoners." "We don't. But when a man attempts to escape, when a man of the Kingslayer's skill attempts to escape, there are consequences." Jon sighed. When he heard of his twin's death, he went berserk. That night, he tried to escape and failed in killing one of the Karstarks only by sheer happenstance. The next night, he procured a glass shard from where we do not know and succeeded in killing one of his own bannermen before one of our direwolves stopped him. "We attempted to reason with him," Sansa explained, "but he refused to let go of that glass piece and started trying to claw at his own neck. One of our direwolves bit off his hand when he wouldn't let go." Tyrion looked weary, Sansa thought. Weary and too tired to even profess shock over his brother's apparent madness. "Once the negotiations are done," she said gently, "you can meet with him. I'm sorry that we've had to confine you from both the Kingslayer and your nieces and nephews, but it was necessary." "Negotiations for what?" he asked, confused. Jon arched an eyebrow. "They've not told you?" "I have little enough information in my cell," Tyrion said, and it was half defiant, half exhausted. "A pretty comfortable cell, Your Grace, but a cell all the same." "I am not your sister," Sansa replied soberly. "The truth does not frighten me. No, my lord, the truth is this: none of my siblings has any desire to sit on the Iron Throne. This kind of power is too much for any man to bear. It makes them go mad. Westeros was bound together by fear of dragons and fire, but the dragons are gone now, and so we shall split the continent back into its constituent kingdoms." Jon sent her a quick smile. 8 kingdoms, my lord. And of these 8, the Westerlands are one, and there is only one man I see who has the blood right to it." Tyrion blinked quickly before giving a short bark of laughter. "You intend to put me as ruler?" Those lords would dethrone me within a moon's turn. Sansa's lips twitched. I could place a goat as head of the Westerlands, and there wouldn't be a revolt for at least a half-decade, she told him. The land has been burned, Lord Tyrion. My brother has razed it to the ground. And if you're smart, as I know you to be, you'll consolidate your own power in those 5 years of leeway that you have. Though I rather hope you'll be better than a goat when you sit on a throne. And what of Myrcella and Tommen? Their fate remains undecided. Sansa held up a hand at his protests. They won't be mistreated, my lord. That much I can and will assure you. But sometimes marriages must be made, and if they are willing to the match, only then will their fate not lie in your hands. If there are to be no marriages, then we shall leave their guardianship to you, and of course, once the negotiations are finished, you shall take your brother home with you. Jon nodded. 'Tis a good deal, my lord. I'd strongly suggest you take it. It's kinder than any other would have offered. The same words the Kingslayer said to me at last, Hearth. My, how the tables have turned. I will think on it, said Tyrion, and bowed and left. Sansa sighed, once the throne room was empty, spine bowing a little. Jon sent her a commiserating expression, and she rolled her eyes before calling, send the next in. Robb left the morning that Uncle Edmure came. And after that, the others arrived. The Lannisters were already there, and so were the Tualas. But Bronze Yohn Royce came, escorting sweet Robin. Asha Greyjoy arrived with 50 longships and a stack of letters for her brother. The last of the Tyrells finally arrived from Highgarden. Davos Seaworth, accompanied by Shireen Baratheon, as dour and kind as ever. And finally, Oberyn Martell landed with a coterie of other Martells surrounding him like satyrs or snakes, Sansa thought, and rose to greet them. Asha watched the queen carefully. Sansa Stark had proven to have more teeth than anyone could have predicted. The old courtiers had heard King Robb's decision to place the full responsibility of breaking Westeros apart on her shoulders, and they'd laughed. The retiring girl who'd scarcely stepped out of her rooms in the keep would have to rule the entire continent? She'll either let someone rule in her name, one of them had told Asha, or she'll start crying on her first day. But she hadn't. Sansa had welcomed Asha's 50 longships with a smile that showed nothing but rehearsed, placid warmth. A show of strength that would have made any warm-blooded Baratheon loyalist quail for certain. The Ironborn rebellion had been at the forefront of everyone's mind when Asha sailed her fleet up the river, which only made the girls smile. The courtier who'd assured Asha of Sansa's docility looked rather cowed, in fact, when Asha finally saw him in the Red Keep. A wolf, thought Asha, amused. So you've decided to show your teeth, have you? Little matter. Everyone knows krakens are rather more dangerous than pale-toothed wolves, no matter how much you sharpen your claws. 2 days later, she stretched out her legs in the council room and watched Sansa carefully, all the while looking as disinterested as she could. I am glad you came, Sansa said, that same practiced smile on her face. When the ruler of Westeros calls for you, said Asha, one doesn't dally. I don't precisely see the choice I had, your grace. What I meant was that I'm glad you came, Sansa corrected. You are your father's heir, aren't you? Or close enough to make a little difference. You do us great honor with your presence. Do I? Asha drawled. Well, for all that I was raised to be my father's heir, I've little enough support for the crown. I'm no heir. Then who is? My uncles. It's happened before. When a man has no male-born heirs, his brothers take control. She shrugged. And, of course, we determine our leaders in our king's moot. You've no power even if you wished it. I don't want power, Sansa replied, voice still as even as it had been at the beginning of the conversation. Asha wondered what would break her composure. No. Tell me, Lady Asha, would you be amenable to taking the crown? Leave behind the fact that you think it is unlikely. Would you wish to? I know of no Greyjoy who wouldn't, Asha said flatly, though I see little point in this conversation. The coffers are empty, she said suddenly. The treasury kept under King Robert has been depleted almost entirely, but there are still things in it that were worthless to gold diggers. Things that were overlooked, if you understand what I mean. Asha's eyes narrowed. I don't. No? Sansa arched an eyebrow. Have you forgotten so quickly of the Naga crown? They were only another of the things lost in my father's ill-fated rebellion, Asha said slowly. It was used before the driftwood crown to signify the ruler of the Ironborn. Are you offering them back, Your Grace? Sansa looked at her steadily, albeit a bit confusedly, and then sighed. There has been news from Pike, my lady, she said carefully. I thought you were aware of it. You've certainly not been isolated from ravens since your arrival. Though looking at you now, I'm fairly certain you've no idea of what has happened. If you did something, I'll gut you like a fish and damn the consequences. What are you talking about? Asha asked warily. Your father suffers from a draining disease, Sansa said quietly. I'm not sure what it is, only that it is there. It is why I called you here, to talk over it. My father is ill, Asha said, bowing her head. There was a faint ringing in her ears. Asha breathed in, shallow and open mouthed. She breathed out and then raised her chin and met Sansa's gaze as steadily as Sansa had ever done. I will have to leave for Pike, she announced. And you shall. Sansa leaned forward. You shall go to your home with the Naga crown, and you shall reign as ruler. You're offering me the crown freely? Asha asked incredulously. I am offering you the crown on one condition, Sansa replied. Of fucking course. That you become Queen of the Iron Islands. What? You heard me. Sansa stepped forward, eyes shining like twin stars. In that moment, Asha could see the bone-deep strength running inside this girl, the self-same strength that had inspired a castle of women to take up arms, the strength that had guided her brother to name her a queen in her own right, the strength that had led her to break apart a kingdom that was 3 centuries hewn together. You heard me. I do not want your uncles to become driftwood kings. Who will stand against a woman who holds the strength of the Hollows? Who is the rightful heir of Balon Greyjoy, who calls a king smoot and claims the sea-stone chair wearing the Nagate crown? And what do you want in return? Asha demanded, eyes hard. In return for the crown, what do you want me to do? I warn you, I will not sacrifice my people's pride for yours. You wouldn't be a good ruler if you did. No, what I want is something smaller. In a few years, after you've settled your kingdom, all I want is for you to provide me with an audience. She raised an eyebrow. The contract's been written if you wish to read it. Asha pursed her lips. Let me see it. Sansa nodded and reached for a paper amongst the stack on the table. Asha took it and read it, every line. There'd been a good-looking sailor in Fair Isle who'd been a shark for the contract, and Ishad nearly signed her ship and herself away with her carelessness. She'd stuck him with a dirk and sailed away quickly, but she'd learned her lesson. Contracts were important. You just want an audience, Asha stated when she'd finished reading. You're giving back the Naga crown, you're handing me a throne, and all you want is an audience. She tossed the contract onto the table and folded her arms over her chest. Tell me, Queen Sansa, are you as much of a fool as people call you? Sansa blinked. Her lips twitched slightly, but in the end she settled for looking politely confused. Are there people calling me a fool? Not the point. Asha felt her nails bite into the flesh of her upper arm. Why give me so much? And speak plainly, I've no patience for avoidance. If I told you, you wouldn't believe me. Sansa smiled tiredly. The major reason, at least, is something I won't tell you. But there are others. You won't bring raiders to the shores of the other kingdoms as your Uncle Euron would. The Tyrells are rather taken with you, so there's little opposition from them to naming you as queen. And Theon thinks you'd be good at it. Does he? Asha asked, truly curious. Sansa nodded. He didn't say as much, of course. But when Robb asked, Theon said that your uncles weren't the most level-headed persons. Being the least evil of 3 potential rulers is no compliment, Asha said wryly. Less so when the ones being compared are Victarion and Euron Greyjoy. Perhaps, Sansa sighed. So, to answer your question, yes. I wish for you to welcome me, or a representative coming in my name, to your court. I want a private conference with you, one that will be granted without delay. And that is the only condition I am placing before I give you the Naga crown. Asha rocked backwards, reached for the contract, skimmed it again, swallowed through a dry throat, and then nodded. All right, she said. I'll sign it. On the way from their second meeting with the Stormlords and towards their fourth with the Tyrells, Willa caught Alice's attention and gestured for her to step away from the crowd. When Alice slipped into a small alcove, Willa followed. Is it Serwyn? She asked. Alice arched an eyebrow. Give Adara some credit, Willa. She has taste at least. Willa rolled her eyes. A moment later, black and gold colors flashed away from the door and she grinned. You've heard the news, I take it? That the Queen's got her first challenge under her belt? Alice nodded. She was rather worried that the other potential rulers, meaning, of course, the Tyrells, wouldn't agree to Asha Greyjoy. But the Tyrells were rather happy about it when I spoke to them today morning. Well, that's fine too, but I was talking about why the Tyrells are so agreeable to her. Wella grinned and jogged Alice's elbow. Besides the fact that Asha's foreign policy is entirely at odds with her uncle's, meaning no raiding on Tyrell grounds? She asked dryly. I couldn't think of any reason for them to support her, Willa. Absolutely none, I tell you. Don't be mean. Willa pouted, but quickly shook it off. No, well, that might have been important too. But turns out her biggest supporter amidst the Tyrells is Marjorie. Alice blinked. Marjorie, the daughter of Mace Tyrell? That's the one. Marjorie, the widow of Renly Baratheon? That Marjorie? Yes. And is she just a supporter, or is it more? Willa grinned at her. Take a guess. Good gods, Alice breathed. Well, this changes things, doesn't it? Does it? Marjorie Tyrell and Asha Greyjoy. Alice gestured pointedly, heatedly. Do you really not see what can come of an Ironborn Reach alliance? Willa drew up short, jaw snapping shut with a decisive click. I didn't. You're a fool, Alice told her, and Willa didn't bother saying anything. Does the Queen know? I'll tell her. Willa turned and started towards the door before glancing back at her. Do you know where she is? Still with the Stormlords, I think, said Alice. She paused again, a bare hesitation, before adding, Tell her what Lord Errol told us after the meeting, all right? Willa remembered Lord Errol and suppressed a wince. He had eyes the same color as the blue of the white knife in the hours before the river froze over, and his skin was as colorless as the ice that collected on its banks. Her leg always ached when she had to speak to him, as if in warning. He'd approached them after their last meeting with the Stormlords, in which Sansa had finally announced that she wished to support Shireen Baratheon's claim to the Storm Throne. If you give that cursed girl a crown, he said she'll not make it to another name day. Sansa can't do anything about that, Willa pointed out. Alice rolled her shoulders and sighed. Not just Errol's threat. I forgot. It was Adira who was with me when I spoke to her. Well, I spoke to Lady Shireen last night, and she's saying she doesn't want the throne, which is slightly more difficult to answer than any singular threat. Fucking hell, Willa muttered, and spun towards the door before turning back again. Don't take Adara next time you want to talk to anyone below the age of 15. She tends to scare most of them silly because... She has no expression? Alice sighed again. I saw it yesterday. She made things so much more uncomfortable than necessary. I think Lady Shireen cried after we left, Though I think Adara does that to everyone, not just people below 15. I'm only willing to protect people that young, Willa retorted. Anyone older can fend for themselves. She scrubbed a hand down her face, allowing herself a moment of indulgence before straightening. All right. Good luck with the Tyrells, I'll meet you there. Of course, said Alice, and they parted ways easily.